Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we are looking at the second of the top four match from the Frankfurt Regional Championships that happened this past weekend, the previous weekend, not the current weekend, which is Pittsburgh weekend, but this is a pretty exciting matchup. The first top four match was pretty sweet, but going into this match, we have Davide versus Víctor Medina here. Both of these players have been incredibly successful in Pokemon VGC over the last few years, and both are looking to add a pretty good tournament win to their belt here at Frankfurt. We've had some stellar players and some stellar plays here. Speaking of, we have Arcanine, Espathra, Sneasler, Kingambit, Indeedee, and Hydreigon. The name of the game for Frankfurt has been some incredibly surprising Pokemon picks. Arcanine here with the Terra Water, Mirror Herb, Intimidate, Flare Blitz, Rock Slide, Close Combat, and Protect. Sneasler with the Unburdened, Psychic Seed, Terra Dark with the Dire Claw, Close Combat, Throat Chop, and Protect. Indeedee here to set that Psychic Terrain with the Psychic Surge to trigger that Psychic Seed to trigger the Unburden with the Terra Dragon, Rocky Helmet, Psychic, Follow Me, Helping Hand, and Protect. Hydreigon on the bottom right with that Terra Ghost, Safety Goggles, Draco Meteor, Snarl, Kingambit. We didn't get to the Espathra, but the Espathra is the big thing there with that Terra Psychic, Lumina Crash, and the speed boost and faster turn over turn, as well as the expanding force to take advantage of the Psychic terrain. It's an incredibly cool Pokemon. And on the other side of things here, we have a relatively standard rain team with Incineroar, Basculegion, Goldengo, Pelipper, Amoonguss, and Archaludon. Incineroar is Terra Water with the Safety Goggles, a very, very standard set. Flare Blitz, Knockoff, Parting Shot, and Fake Out. Basculegion is your Choice Band Basculegion with the Terra Water, Swift Swim to double its speed in the rain, Wave Crash, Last Respects, Flip Turn, and Aqua Jet. Goldengo here is Terra Flying, get rid of that ground type weakness. With Life Orb, Good as Gold, Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Nasty Plot, and Protect. Amoonguss here with the Terra Psychic is a little bit of a unique Terra, but otherwise relatively standard Amoonguss with the Citrus Berry, Pollen Puff, Spore, Rage Powder, and Protect. Archaludon, very good rain Pokemon with Terra Fighting to get that Body Press, some additional damage, Flash Cannon, Draco Meteor, Electro Shot, and Assault Vest. And notably, that is a Pelipper. Hold on, let me double check here. There was a Choice Specs Pelipper earlier in the tournament. No, this is just your standard Focus Sash Pelipper, has the Tailwind, has the Weather Ball, has the Hurricane, has the Protect. So for Victor, a very, very standard rain team, a very successful team overall, and we're already getting into that matchup. This is Pelipper versus Basculegion. This is one of the fastest previews to in-game times I've ever seen in my life, and Davide is bringing that Indeedee and the Espathra, so both these players bringing their go-to pairings right off the bat. This is aggression versus aggression, all things considered. This is going to be Espathra probably going for some high damage here. There is no good spread moves from Victor, so Indeedee going for Follow Me is going to be able to redirect all of Basculegion and even that Pelipper's damage to a pretty good extent. Now, Victor can go for that Terra Water here on the Basculegion to get some even more damage, or, you get rid of some weaknesses. But Davide, with this Espathra, can go ahead and go for Terra Psychic. You have the redirection from the Indeedee to draw in a lot of Basculegion and Pelipper's damage. It might take out Indeedee in one shot here. I would be a little bit surprised, but Espathra is going to be able to get some guaranteed damage on this turn. Victor does swap out the Pelipper there, wants to preserve it, and the Focus Sash for later in the game. And Incineroar makes its way onto the battlefield here. Very smart swap in with that Dark typing, makes it immune to Espathra's Psychic type attacks. We do see the Terrestrialization coming through. I believe this is for Davide on this side. It is indeed, and the Espathra is going for that Terra Psychic. So it's trying to get as much damage here as possible. Lumina Crash is a single target move, but Expanding Force in that Psychic terrain does not only get boosted damage, but also is a spread move. Indeed, he does go for the Follow Me here. That is going to draw in probably what is Basculegion's attack here. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like Wave Crash. It's actually going to be the flip turn from Victor Medina here. The Indeedee takes a considerable amount of damage. There is going to be some Rocky Helmet recoil, but Basculegion is probably feeling relatively fine with that. It's not the tankiest Pokemon anyways, so it's not planning on taking too many hits. We are going to see another swap in here. Pelipper would guaranteed survive a potential Expanding Force from the Espathra here, but it's going to be Archaludon making its way onto the field now. Also a pretty good resistance into the Expanding Force here with that Assault Vest and a Steel typing. So Archaludon should be able to take this pretty well, and Incineroar is going to be absolutely fine. Yeah, Archaludon actually does take about a third of its HP, which is pretty big, but that stamina boost is massive. So Body Press already at a +1. Notably for Victor, Fake Out is not live for Incineroar, but Knockoff is, and can do some good damage into both of these Pokemon. Now, in previous matchups, we got to see that Espathra is relatively tanky, should be able to survive a Knockoff from Incineroar here, unless that previous Incineroar was just incredibly defensively trained, and this is incredibly offensively trained. But I do think Espathra should still be able to tank a Knockoff here. That said, Archaludon with the Body Press into the Indeedee, Knockoff from Incineroar into the Espathra should still do quite a lot of work. If you are Davide, you could go for Protect on Espathra here. That will guarantee get it to a pretty fast spot, and then you should be able to still dish out some good damage. The only thing is, I don't remember, I think this Espathra also has Dazzling Gleam, which still doesn't do all that much into Incin. Davide, though, making the swap taking the Indeedee out and bringing Hydreigon onto the battlefield now, and we do see a Protect from that Espathra again that will give it an additional speed boost that should guarantee that it outspeeds what Victor currently has on the field. We do see Electro Shot coming through from the Archaludon here in the rain. That is going to be a one-turn move to get that one special attack boost, and then the damage out. Now, it looks like this, yeah, this is going into Hydreigon here. Was not targeting the Espathra with this. It doesn't do a ton into Hydreigon, does about a little less than a third of its HP, and the knockoff was going into that Espathra slot. So, the big thing for Davide here, the reason you want to get that Hydreigon in is because you can threaten a Draco Meteor into Archaludon. That's likely going to be more than enough damage to KO it alongside an expanding force, doing another third chunk to its damage, or to its health damage pool. Incineroar is still relatively in a good spot. It doesn't mind being up against either of these Pokemon, but if you are Victor, your Archaludon does not like the spot that it is currently in. You could potentially sacrifice it on this turn, just to say, hey, you know what, we might as well do it. And get safe switching for the Basculegion on the next turn, but that is still going to be pretty tough. We do see a special defense drop from the Archaludon here that is going to mean that a potential Draco Meteor from this Hydreigon is going to do more than enough against it. And it absolutely does. A critical hit to boot. So a special defense drop and a critical hit. Archaludon just was not surviving that turn no matter what. For Incineroar, though, knockoff again into the Espathra. It's going to do a considerable amount of damage, and it actually does enough this time. I actually don't remember if Espathra, maybe I was tripping, but I feel like there was a knockoff previously on Espathra that did not do quite enough damage in a previous matchup, but no, that did more than enough. So it is a trade for Espathra for Archaludon here. Honestly, if you are Victor, I think you don't mind this. You still have an incredibly strong sweeper in Basculegion in the back, and you've done a considerable amount of damage to Indeedee already. Victor does bring in the Basculegion at this point. It is going incredibly fast. Sneasler notably does get Unburden procced here. That is going to be pretty big. It's going to be moving incredibly fast as well, and that does put a lot of pressure on Incineroar. A close combat into Incin is going to do a lot of work, especially without there being any Intimidates laid down. Now, Incineroar could go for a Terastallization here. That would remove the fighting type weakness, and notably, Basculegion does not take all that much damage from Sneasler. While it is under a lot of threat from the Hydreigon, it can still hit like an absolute truck into Hydreigon, and it might even be able to take it out from this point. Last Respects won't do all that much. It is a ghost type move, but Wave Crash, even though it is resisted, with Basculegion in the rain, if Basculegion does decide to go for a Terastallization here, that might be enough to take out Hydreigon. It's not the bulkiest Pokemon in the world. That said, Sneasler does still have to worry about the physical damage coming out from this very, very angry fish, and so Davide does go for Protect on this turn. Now, Victor could have made an incredibly bold call here. It is flip. Okay, no, it is going to be a flip turn going into that Sneasler, so that leaves Basculegion on the field here without getting too much damage out, leaves it a little bit vulnerable. This is going to be a -2 Draco Meteor from the Hydreigon, and it really does not do very much into that Basculegion. Knockoff comes in, hits that Hydreigon, takes out the safety goggles. That's the most damage that you're going to get out of that knockoff, and notably with being in the rain and Hydreigon being a dragon type, Flare Blitz probably isn't going to be doing that much more. Rain is going to be fading here soon. I think Victor wants to, do whatever he can to guarantee that Pelipper can wait one more turn before coming back in at this point. I think if you were able to get that swap out on the previous turn, you were probably feeling pretty fine bringing the Basculegion in on the next turn. But I think right now, Basculegion does have to go. Actually, Basculegion does have to go for Flip Turn on this turn. This might be a good spot for Victor to swap the Incineroar into Pelipper, and then Basculegion gets that Flip Turn off and brings Incineroar back in. It's a little bit risky if you are Victor, but that could work overall. Both Psychic Terrain and Rain are ending soon. Close Combat does come through, and it was a call that Pelipper was going to get swapped in for the Basculegion. Instead, it's just going to be Flip Turn again, which does more than enough damage to KO Sneasler from that point. Choice Band on this Basculegion just does so much work. This is going to mean Pelipper makes its way onto the battlefield now, and notably, Victor could still go for a potential parting shot into the Hydreigon. It's already at -4. You might as well make it down to -5, and that would bring the Basculegion back in, and it would swap out how much or which attack it can use. Incineroar does get hit by another Draco Meteor. This Hydreigon is at, it literally cannot have lower special attack, I believe, at this point. Yeah, it's as weak as it's going to get, and it is only a special attacker. It is essentially a completely neutralized Hydreigon and an Indeedee on the field up against a Basculegion and a Pelipper. Victor can just swap out as he needs to, essentially, for the rest of this game, because quite frankly, Incineroar should be able to solo this, even if for some reason Basculegion and Pelipper go down. There would have to be, I think, some double crits from the Hydreigon on Draco Meteors here, maybe some Snarl critical hits in order for Davide to win this game. I think you could still play it out if you were Davide. If you get some big critical hits, it's not the end of the world. Psychic Terrain is back up. You once again stop Fake Up from coming through. you get some critical hit Draco Meteors, some critical hit Snarls, you might still be able to win the game, but it's going to be a very, very tall task if you are Davide. If you are Victor, you just have to play steadily here. Basket Legion is still incredibly fast. I don't know if it outspeeds Hydreigon out of the rain, but it should still be able to get some good damage in. Hydreigon is the #1 threat here. If you can take the Hydreigon down, Incineroar always wins against this Indeedee in a 1v1. So, Victor, looking for probably Weather Ball, or just swapping out the Pelipper and bringing in Incineroar. That will still do some good damage into the Hydreigon as well. And it also gives you the option to bring Pelipper back in, reset the rain, and then get Water-type stab Weather Balls going, or Hurricanes with maximum accuracy. Hydreigon does move first, but with that maxed out special, or with that minimized special attack stat, Basket Legion takes absolutely no damage from that. No critical hit comes through, and this should be all she wrote. Wave Crash actually does target into the Indeedee, so there's going to be some recoil damage on the Basket Legion. Notably, I think now I want to be clear here. I am saying this because it's a very, very technical sense. The Indeedee can't win against Incineroar. Hydreigon can potentially win against Incineroar. It's incredibly unlikely, but it could happen. But Davide sees the writing on the wall, and that 99% chance of loss is just simply too much for him to want to try to continue with, which is very understandable. Again, very, very technically, I mean, Basket Legion would probably be moving next because Pelipper would be coming back onto the battlefield. That would probably do enough to KO the Hydreigon, but, you get some Snarl critical hits, maybe you win, but probably not again at the end of all things. So, coming into game number 2 here, if you are Davide, that's a tough spot to be in. You know that Knockoff basically KOs your Espathra from full HP. You had good damage up against that Archaludon, but using so many Draco Meteors, being forced to use Draco Meteor, and then not being able to swap the Hydreigon out while the rest of your Pokemon just got dealt with very easily is a very tough spot to be in. Your Sneasler going down really is the big thing that hurts that much. Flip turn into Sneasler, KOing it from full HP without even a terrestrialization investment on the Basket Legion's part is incredible. It wasn't even a critical hit. Maybe it was a high roll, but having to deal with that amount of damage is just going to be incredibly, incredibly difficult. And I don't think really Davide has a lot of great options into that. So we're going to have to see what adjustments you can make, quite frankly, if you are Davide. Incineroar doesn't feel great. You do have some terrestrializations that you can use to maneuver it, but I'm very interested to see if Davide can make any adjustments for this game number 2, because if you're Victor Medina, I think you're feeling very, very good about the rest of this series. So coming into this, already leading the same thing for Victor, and it is that King Gambit making its way onto the battlefield now for Davide. This is probably the best swap that you can make. You do have Sucker Punch available, and I think starting with the Hydreigon is good. 1, you have Taunt to try to deal with Pelipper's potential Tailwind. 2, you have really good resistances into both of these Pokemon that Victor is leading. 3, Draco Meteor still does a ton of damage, and now you also have priority pressure with Sucker Punch. You still have high damage pressure with Kowtow Cleave, and just overall, King Gambit is a really strong Pokemon. Victor was not afraid to bring in Incineroar in the previous game, but now that King Gambit is on the field with that Defiant ability, its attack stat will only climb if an Intimidator comes onto the battlefield. We do see Victor going for the terrestrialization on the Basket Legion here. We didn't see this in the last game, and it was already pumping out insane damage numbers. So what are we going to see from it now? Sucker Punch does come through. Notably, that removes the Ghost type weakness that it would have had. Looks like that probably would have done enough to KO, and Flip Turn is coming through. Looks like it is going into Basket Legion is going into that King Gambit and does so much damage, taking King Gambit down to barely a quarter of its HP. We could see Incineroar coming in here if you are Victor. You have to be a little bit wary of that. Again, you don't want to give King Gambit too much room to grow here, but Archaludon makes its way onto the battlefield. A very bold call from Victor, bringing Archaludon in against the Hydreigon, and Taunt goes up against the Pelipper. Is Pelipper going for an aggressive move here? It is. Victor not punished by that Taunt. This is a Water-type Weather Ball coming in, and Davide's King Gambit is already down. That was 100% going to be Davide's primary answer into that Basket Legion. It already did a good amount of work, but it has fallen, and now Davide has essentially the 3 Pokemon that he had in the last game to try to make things work. Sneasler comes onto the battlefield now. No Psychic Terrain yet, so that Psychic Seed is not procced. That Speed Boost is not here. Notably, I don't think that is going to matter all that much. Pelipper and Archaludon should both be slower. The only place that I think it would be somewhat relevant is if Sneasler is in against the Basque Legion at the same time. Right now, you do not have to worry about that if you are Davide. You could go ahead and start throwing out Snarls if you need to. That would lower the special attack of both these Pokemon on the battlefield, but Hydreigon is equally pressured by Body Press as it pressures Archaludon with Draco Meteor. That is something that Davide has to be incredibly wary of, that if you do not get Archaludon KO'd on this turn, then you are going to be in an incredibly tough position if Hydreigon goes down. We do see the swap out here. Indeedee does come in. That's going to set up Psychic Terrain. This gives Sneasler a little bit more room to work. Archaludon cannot go for Protect. It does have that Assault Vest. Close combat from Sneasler can do just about enough damage. It does depend on defensive training for the Archaludon, but this could do enough to KO it potentially. However, if Victor is about to bring in Incineroar, then that will almost guarantee that will not do enough damage. So a -1 onto this Sneasler should guarantee that Archaludon can survive this turn and can either throw out a Body Press or a potential Electro Shot, but Sneasler does not go for the aggressive option, instead just going for Protect here. This is going to give Archaludon the ability to get a +1 on the special attack and get some good damage into potentially Indeedee. We saw it target down that slot previously. Are we going to see it again? That's a +1, but it goes into the Protect here. So Sneasler safe, Indeedee safe. Fake out pressure not active for Victor, but again, knockoff is available. That said, this is a time when there is no terrestrialization available for Victor. Victor did not use it in the previous game, so neither of these Pokemon can avoid that super effective fighting type damage from Sneasler on this turn. Knockoff still available from Incineroar, but again, like we said before, Helping Hand could make the math a little bit different here. This is the big turn. Sneasler's damage into Archaludon. Will it be enough to get a KO? This could be enough to get Davide back in the game, but it does not do it. It also weakens Sneasler's defenses. If Archaludon targets Sneasler in again, that should be more than enough. Electro Shot coming through. That's going to be a +2 special attack Electro Shot. Indeedee is relatively bulky. Sneasler does have a +1 to its, or did have a +1 to its special defense. It's at neutral special defense right now, but Archaludon does just go for that Electro Shot into Indeedee, taking it down to 50 HP. Where is Incineroar going now? It is going to be a parting shot into the Sneasler that's going to allow Incineroar to swap out now. And notably, Archaludon being alive means it can both swap out or apply pressure. That is something that Davide has to be wary of. I think for Victor, the smart thing to do, depending on what we bring in here, actually, I don't know if Victor wants to go ahead and bring in the Basque Legion or if he wants to bring in Pelipper. Rain should still be around for another turn. We can see Victor thinking about this, and it's going to be the Basque Legion coming in. You have a couple of turns here, I think, with Rain. I don't think this is the last turn of Rain. I think you still have a couple more. I haven't done the math completely. So, and even if there's not, if both Indeedee and Sneasler go for Protect here, on the next turn, you can bring Pelipper in, and it should be able to... and it'll reset the Rain and allow Basque Legion to continue to be aggressive. I think this is still a good spot. Already we've seen that Sneasler goes down to flip turn previously, and with a -1 on that close, after that close combat to the defense and Basque Legion being Terra Water, we know the flip turn does more than enough damage to Sneasler to take it out, and it should also do the same to Indeedee. Rocky Helmet recoil could be a little bit of a bother for the Basque Legion, but it should still be enough to get a relatively clean KO. We don't see any swap outs here for Victor. Both Pokemon staying in. Close combat comes through from the Sneasler, and it takes out the Archaludon. Notably, this will give Victor a relatively clean swap in for whatever other Pokemon he wants, be it the Pelipper, be it the Incin, or be it the Basque Legion, if it swaps out with Flip Turn again on this turn. It is that Flip Turn. I imagine it's going into Indeedee at this point. Indeedee goes down, and that is probably going to bring in Incin. That's a lot of recoil damage from the Rocky Helmet, but Indeedee does go down, and now it is going to be Hydreigon and Sneasler for Davide up against the Rain Core from Victor along with Incineroar. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see Incin come in here. That would reduce Sneasler's physical attack again, and Davide would have no way to swap it out. And now we're at a point where Davide really wants to be throwing out Draco Meteors with Hydreigon almost. You're not going to be able to do much into the Incineroar otherwise. Snarl doesn't do a lot. You could go for Dark Pulses potentially. I think that is the other move that, or no, it's Taunt actually that Hydreigon has. So it really is those only two moves. So unless Davide is getting a lot of really big KOs with this Hydreigon, Victor is going to be in a really, really good spot to close this game out. Not only having the Pokemon advantage, but also just in general, the tempo and the speed advantage once Basque Legion makes its way back out onto the battlefield. So we do see Victor debating, I think, which Pokemon to bring in. I think you bring Basque Legion in at this point if the Rain is going down this turn. If the Rain is going down next turn, then I think you can still bring in Pelipper at this point and be, or or no, you bring in Basque Legion at this point. If the rain was going down at the end of this turn, I don't think you bring in Pelipper. I think it's Basque Legion every single time. Hydreigon makes its way onto the battlefield. This should be the last turn of rain, so Incineroar could still potentially go for a parting shot here. Just put Sneasler's attack set into the ground like he did to the Hydreigons in the previous game, and right now Basque Legion can just get to work. You know Flip Turn KOs the Sneasler from this point, but what is notable for Victor is there are two really good aggressive threats for Davide. You are at -2 for that Sneasler on your physical moves, but Hydreigon can still do damage, and even at -2, Sneasler is nothing to scoff at. So unless Pelipper and Incineroar can do really good damage to close out the rest of this game, Victor is going to be in a tough spot. We do see Sneasler go for the Protect here. I think the risk that, the gamble that Davide wants to go for is that Victor does not get a swap in safely, and so that this will force, either a Flip Turn coming out from Basque Legion or a parting shot from Incineroar will get negated here, and that will allow Pelipper, or that will force Pelipper to have to come in manually. Basque Legion will be slower, Sneasler will be a lot faster, and will be able to get Dire Claw off. That is exactly what we see. The rain stops on this turn, so now Victor is going to have to do a manual switch for the Pelipper. Notably, Pelipper switching in on the last turn also would not have re-triggered the rain, so that is a little bit of an interesting move for Victor, I think. Unless Victor was anticipating a double protect, which, going super layered into it, anticipating a double protect, wanting to get a Flip Turn on this turn potentially, but that still feels a little bit sketchy. So for Victor, you have to hard switch Pelipper onto the battlefield sometime in the next couple of turns to try to get Basque Legion fast enough, but Basque Legion just barely survives that close combat. That feels incredibly tough if you are Davide. That means this Basque Legion gets another attack off, but Snarl comes through. Incineroar avoids the attack, but Basque Legion goes down. That is actually massive. Okay, so Basque Legion notably slower than Hydreigon to end things out, but now this Sneasler is incredibly fragile, and Incineroar can go for a Flare Blitz that is not neutered by the rain. Sneasler goes down. Hydreigon now on the field. It is going to have to take 2 KOs in 3 hits. Pelipper will not go down in 1 shot. Psychic Terrain is gone, but that is not going to matter all that much. It is a 2v1, but it is not over quite yet. Pelipper comes out onto the battlefield and resets the rain. Incineroar is going to be forced to knock off into the Hydreigon, and we saw that it does not do very much damage. Davide right now can go for Snarl to make sure that Pelipper's Focus Sash gets broken and Incineroar takes some damage. This will also guarantee that Pelipper loses at least a little bit in its special attack stat to slow down the damage that Hydreigon is going to be taking from either Hurricanes or Weather Balls. I don't know what is necessarily stronger for Davide. It's probably going to be the Hurricanes. I imagine that's how it goes, but the rain boosted Weather Ball could still be pretty powerful. The Protect comes through from the Pelipper. I think this is a smart move from Victor. You can still min-max your damage output here. Snarl comes through, hits into the Protect. Does it hit the Incin? Again, this could matter a little bit in the future. Incineroar takes a little bit of damage here. Special attack falls, not all that much. Knockoff comes through. That's the most damage Knockoff is going to do, and I believe it does 35 or 25, something like that. So, once again, if you are Davide, I think you go for Snarl here. It needs to hit both Pokemon, but primarily it needs to hit Pelipper to break that Focus Sash. Then you go for Draco Meteor into Pelipper, Draco Meteor into the Incineroar, and hope it does enough damage. Pelipper takes about 1/3 of its HP, maybe about 1/4, and gets that special attack drop. Incineroar special attack drop, again, does not matter. How much damage does Pelipper do here with the Hurricane? That is going to be the big question. Not that much. No confusion here. Knockoff again. Hydreigon down below half HP. Davide needs to hit a Draco Meteor here on the Pelipper in order to win this game. Snarl is not a good option. You could go for Protect if you are Davide. Try to stall out the rain turns. Honestly, I don't think that's a bad idea. Oh, that might have been a better idea for Davide to try to win this game. You guarantee that Weather Ball does less damage, and you make Hurricane more likely to miss. I think that is still an option potentially for Davide. There's no recovery for Victor here. You can Protect. You have 1 more turn where you're going to get hit by Hurricane plus Knockoff. Pelipper goes for the Protect here. Davide just trying to play aggressively. I don't know if this is the right call. Hydreigon goes for the Draco Meteor, but it's going into the Pelipper slot. Victor kind of stalling out his own rain, but he's making a good call. He's getting some more damage out with the Incineroar here. Knockoff comes through again, does 22 or 23 damage this time around. Hydreigon will now go down to a single Hurricane if it hits. It will go down to, it might go down to 2 more knockoffs, and it will go down to a Hurricane. Davide needs to get a KO on the Pelipper here. And he does. How much damage does the Incineroar do on this next turn? And notably, will a Draco Meteor KO Incineroar from this point? Knockoff comes through again. Hydreigon now to 27 HP. That is how much damage that knockoff just did. It just did 27. So Davide has at most 2 more attacks, maybe only 1 more here. Draco Meteor coming through. It's already at -2 on Hydreigon is already at -2. Another Draco Meteor here will put it down to -4, and we saw how little damage that did to Incineroar previously. Draco Meteor comes through for Davide, and this is not going to be nearly enough. I don't even think a critical hit at this point will do it. Victor just going for the parting shot here. I can see where his head is at. I believe this will mean rain fades on this turn, and Victor now has the ability to go for Flare Blitz, the much stronger move. Davide needs to hit a Draco Meteor here. It needs to be a massive crit. It needs to be something, but again, I don't even think a critical hit would do it. Incineroar takes it like an absolute champ and should Flare Blitz to KO the Hydreigon and send Victor Medina into the finals. That game got very close. If you are Davide, that is so tough. You get down to just your Hydreigon 2 times in a row, and you know, going into trying to stall out the rain to avoid hurricane and strong weather ball hits versus, while also having to keep in mind that Flare Blitz would be stronger is a very tough call. Flare Blitz would do more damage than Knockoff, but with the combination of Knockoff plus guaranteed hurricanes, do more damage than just the Flare Blitz. It's a tough question, and it also goes to show just how specially tanky Victor's Incineroar is, that it took that damage from Draco Meteor, even at -2 from a Hydreigon, at an absolute champ. Like I said, I don't even know if a critical hit would have mattered in that last 2-turn cycle. So Victor Medina moving on to the finals will be facing Emmanuel Briganti. So I'm very excited for that matchup, which we'll be covering, if you're watching this as it comes out, on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. Until next time, y'all, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.